Season 3 begins with us very much heading in the right direction. The dragons have got a bit bigger, and you're starting to see what they'll end up becoming. We're headed to Astapor because we've got our ships and now we need an army.
Some say the Unsullied are the greatest soldiers in the world.
The greatest slave soldiers in the world.
She debates whether the Unsullied would truly be behind her because she's paid them to.
Once I own an army of slaves, what will I be?
Piat Pri has sent a warlock to try and kill me, and I'm saved by Sebastian Selmy.
The honor is mine, my queen.
He pledges allegiance to me because he was head of the Kingsguard for my father.
I've been searching for you, Daenerys Stormborn, to ask your forgiveness. I will not fail you again.
Egret's taking him to meet Mance Rayder, and this is going straight into enemy territory. He doesn't rate his chances of survival particularly high.
Don't look so grim, Jon Snow. If Mance Rayder likes you, you'll live another day. And if you don't...
When Jon first walks into Mance's camp, he meets Tormund.
What do we want with the baby claw?
This baby killed Coronathan.
Mance is a legendary figure. He used to be part of the Night's Watch.
Why do you want to join us?
I saw Craster take his own baby boy and leave it in the woods. I saw what took it.
And why would that make you desert your brothers?
I want to fight for the side that fights for the living.
Do you know how long it's going to take us to get to King's Landing, walking through fields and forests?
Yes.
One thing Jaime's very good at, he's very good at sniffing out people's weaknesses.
Move.
He wants her to lose it with him so that he will get the opportunity to get out of his chains and get rid of her. And then they reach this bridge, and finally he gets the opportunity. It's unbelievable. He goes from one bad situation to a horrible situation. So we have the wonderful lock here.
Let us go. My father will pay you whatever you want.
Enough to buy me a new head?
The season 3 starts with Robb really just wanting to fight someone. And they get to Harrenhal, and again, he can't fight anyone. And worse than that, the people loyal to him have been slaughtered in the most horrific way. Find her a chamber that will serve as a cell.
She's your mother.
She freed Jaime Lannister.
Lannisters robbed them of their sons. She robbed them of their justice.
When we arrive, I get the message that Winterfell, after being taken by Theon, has now been burnt to the ground. And it looks like Bran and Rickon may be dead. By the time Bolton's bastard got to Winterfell, the Ironborn were gone. They massacred everyone and put the castle to the torch. And Bran and Rickon have not been far.
Bran and Rickon have fled Winterfell, and no one has heard from them. But there's a brother and a sister that come.
I'm Jojen Reed. This is my sister, Mira. We've come a long way to find you, Brandon.
They realize he has this power, but he doesn't know anything about it.
And we have much farther to go.
So it's about educating him so that he can actually become what he becomes.
Theon may have taken them back to the Iron Islands as hostages.
Have you heard anything from Theon at all?
What's your name?
Theon Greyjoy.
What is your name?
Reek. My name is Reek.
First of all, they're in the woods trying to find her family. Not necessarily home, just somewhere where she thinks her family may be. And they come across the Brotherhood. They don't know who she is. They don't really want anything to do with her.
You can finish your meals before you go.
You'll free us?
I give you my word.
The Hound had been drinking too much, you know, he's an angry man and a bit lost. I mean, where's the Hound going to go? So I think he was found drunk under a tree. There's not all his wits about him.
Just as she's this close from the door, the Hound recognizes who she is.
Girl!
Then tells the rest of the Brotherhood who she is.
What in seven hells are you doing with the Stark bitch?
Sansa finds a new friend in season 3, Marjorie.
It is my honor to present my grandmother, the Lady Olenna of House Tyrell.
Pretty much as soon as she's introduced to them, they talk about Joffrey.
I want you to tell me the truth about this royal boy, this Joffrey.
Sansa tells them what he's really like.
He's a monster.
Oh, that's a pity.
Tell me what you think of her.
Who?
Marjorie.
She's an ideal match. The Tyrells beside us will crush the Northerners.
The
The new relationship between Marjorie and Joffrey, I think, scares Cersei a lot.
Cersei's really threatened by Marjorie because she's younger and she's more beautiful, she's very smart. But Cersei sees all that. She knows she's a game player.
She married a traitor and known degenerate like Renly Baratheon for a reason.
She married Renly Baratheon because she was told to. That's what intelligent women do, what they're told.
This is what these seasons are becoming about, is her loss of that one thing that kept her sane, because she believed him, you know, he's going to be the next king, and she would reign through him.
The Lord of Harrenhal will make a worthy suitor for the widow Arryn.
For which I am extremely grateful to you.
You'll leave for the Eyrie as soon as possible and bring Lysa Arryn into the fold.
Tywin wants to secure everything, and he figured Littlefinger would be a great person to go up there and take charge.
Lady Arryn and I have known each other since we were children. She has always been positively predisposed toward me.
But Lord Baelish's absence would present certain problems. The royal wedding may end up being the most expensive event in living memory. Not a good time to leave the crown's finances unattended.
Which is why I'm naming you new Master of Coin.
They sort of don't really recognize Tyrion as being so instrumental in saving King's Landing.
The rebels came for Joffrey's head. They lost their own. Thanks to Father.
Thanks to Father.
The Unsullied, who are fundamentally a slave army, do exactly as they're told. When she meets the Unsullied, she realizes that she will take the Unsullied, if only to save them. There's a small amount of bartering that goes on until she kind of pulls out the Ace of Spades.
I have dragons. I'll give you one.
When she hands over the dragon, she swapped the dragon for the whip, which means that she's the master. So she tells them they need to kill all of the slavers.
Tovageris! Axios entas, mendigos entas, urnei dolere, prisotas!
Tassana!
Dracarys.
Orell, he's a warg, and he can look through the eyes of his animal, which is an eagle. He reports back that he's seen dead crows at the Fist of the First Men. When we reach the Fist of the First Men, we discover that there's a kind of horrific pattern of dead horses that's been made, and Mance is quick to point out that this is the work of the White Walkers.
Always the artists.
Mance decides that Jon should go with the climbing party over the wall, for the basic reasons that Jon knows more about the wall than anybody else.
If he's useful, good. If not, throw him off the wall. See if crows can fly.
These men, all these soldiers, they've been on the road for God knows how long, and now suddenly they have this woman. Jaime knows what's going to happen. He knows before it happens. But then when it does happen, he for some reason, I think it surprises himself. He can't just stand by, so he makes up this story.
My father's Lord Selwyn Tarr. Lord Selwyn would pay his daughter's weight in sapphires if she's returned to him.
So Locke thinks about that, and his greed is stronger than his lust, I guess. So he takes it out on Jaime instead.
We get the news that Rob's grandfather is dead at River Run. Rob's very much aware that he needs the army that his mother's family command as well. So they set off to go to River Run for the funeral of his grandfather and to discuss what happens next. And when we get there, Rob meets again the Blackfish and Edmure, Catelyn's brother. Edmure has come up with 2 Lannister prisons.
Willem Lannister, Martin Lannister.
Willem and Martin Lannister are 14 years old. Lord Karstark takes it upon himself during the night to slaughter these 2 young boys chained up in a prison cell. Rob understands why he's done it, but as a king and as a just leader, he can't allow that to go unpunished.
Rickard Karstark, I sentence you to die.
When Rob carries out the sentence on Lord Karstark, Rob loses half his army.
The Karstarks are gone.
They need more men. They need help.
He needs to make amends with the people he's betrayed, which is the phrase.
But because of Rob's breaking of his promise by marrying Talisa when he had been promised to one of Walder Frey's daughters, they are very skeptical about approaching Walder Frey. And rightly so. He sends 2 sons as an envoy. And Walder Frey has said, yes, we will help you. But the sting in the tail is that Edmure must marry one of Walder Frey's daughters.
Could I see her first?
You want to count her teeth?
He's disgusted because everybody in the land knows that nobody in any right mind would want to marry Frey.
The Brotherhood take her to see their leader.
His name is Beric Dondarrion.
She's not particularly happy about it, but they're not hurting her, so it could be worse.
You know, he's a knight, but he's with all these guys in rags and they look like a bunch of swineherds.
If you mean to murder me, then bloody well get on with it.
You'll die soon enough, but it won't be murder.
For some bizarre reason, they choose trial by combat.
Beric gets a sword down his shoulder and topples over and dies.
But somehow Beric Dondarrion is born again with the help of Thoros. It was really pretty spooky stuff.
How many times have you brought me back?
It's the Lord of Light brings you back.
How many times?
This makes 6.
What are you going to do with me?
The first light will ride for Riverrun. Your brother's there now.
What have we here? Frozen crows? We can talk inside, can we?
Mormont and a depleted group of other rangers make it back to Craster's Keep, alive.
But you feed that pig better than you feed us.
Pig's got value to me.
It's at this point that a rebellion starts.
I shall have your head.
We have to go! Now!
I now am a woman on a mission. I've saved 8,000 slaves and I've got a thirst for wanting to save more people. So we move on to Yunkai.
The Yunkish train bed slaves, not soldiers. We can defeat them.
But they won't meet us on the field. They have strong walls.
Belmulte vestreske sir ponte jorina, se ponjo obuljajon mazurina.
So I then set up camp and hear the slavers of Yunkai, and I kind of lay down the law for them.
You will release every slave in Yunkai. Reject this gift, and I shall show you no mercy.
You are mad. We are not Astapor or Karth. We are Yunkai. Those who survive, we shall enslave once more. Perhaps we'll make a slave of you as well.
Now get out.
I give them a little bit of a fright with the dragons, and then I decide that I'm going to kill them.
Before Jon, Ygritte, Tormund and Morel climb the wall, Ygritte sort of coerces Jon into a secret place she knows.
Ygritte!
And decides to really test A, whether he's a crow, and B, whether he loves her.
I don't ever want to leave this cave, Jon Snow.
And Jon does betray his vows. I think it's at that point that he falls in love with Ygritte. It's a rare moment in the story where we have a purely happy moment between two characters. When Jon and the others are climbing the wall, which is 800 feet of ice, a part of the wall breaks off, leaving Jon dangling on the end of a rope, as well as Ygritte. And it's only right at the last minute that Jon manages to save them both.
Finally, they get to Harrenhal, the castle.
Lord Bolton, I give you the Kingslayer.
We have a dinner with Roose Bolton.
I will allow you to go to King's Landing as restitution for the mistakes my soldiers made. And you will swear to tell your father that I had nothing to do with your maiming.
My lady?
She won't be going with you.
When Jaime leaves Harrenhal, he leaves with a bad taste in his mouth. I'm leaving her with Locke.
Don't you worry about your friend. We'll take good care of her.
But then on the road, he finds out that it's only a matter of time, then they're going to kill her. And he, again, surprises himself in a way he so wants to just not care. But he does, and he goes back.
Taking her to King's Landing, unless you kill me. Well, we must be on our way.
Spotted a Lannister raiding party.
How far?
Less than a day's ride south.
Time for a lion hunt.
They say, oh, we're going to go and kill some Lannisters, and then we'll take you home.
I swear to you, this isn't any...
You're a liar! They're all distracted, getting on their armor and things like that. So she sees her opportunity, and she goes for it.
Hand guy, bring her back. Come back, girl!
Then gets stopped by the hound.
Kick all you like, Wolfgar. Won't do you no good.
He sees a chance of using Arya as a bargaining chip.
Is that the Blackwater?
That's the Red Fork. I'm taking you to the twins. Your uncle's marrying one of the Frey girls. Your mother and brother
will be there, and they'll pay me for you. So a great road trip begins.
Littlefinger comes along and he says to Sansa, he's got a ship and he could take her with him.
Please, Lord Baelish, tell me what to do, tell me when.
She, yet again, thinks she's gonna get out of here.
You must see Highgarden.
I don't think the Queen would let me leave King's Landing.
Marjorie wants to marry Sansa off to her brother, Loras Tyrell.
Once I marry Joffrey, I'll be queen. And if you were to marry Loras...
Which Sansa is over the moon about. She's getting married to a guy that's actually nice.
The Tyrells are plotting to marry Sansa Stark to Sir Loras. We need to find Sansa Stark a different husband.
He tells Tyrion he's going to marry Sansa, which I find hilarious. Then kind of within the same breath, lets me know that I'll be marrying Marjorie's brother.
Tyrion will do as he's bid, as will you.
What do you mean?
You'll marry Sir Loras.
I will not.
But you will.
This arranged marriage to Sansa doesn't go very well. She doesn't like that news at all.
She wasn't going to go on Littlefinger's ship because she was being married to Loras. Now Littlefinger sailed away. She's getting married to Tyrion, who she didn't want to get married to.
So, am I invited to your wedding?
Shay is pretty gutted about this marriage to Tyrion.
Especially now that she's Sansa's handmaiden.
Listen to me, my lady.
I'm not your lady, I'm your whore.
He's vulnerable, Tyrion, and that's very frightening to him.
The wedding to Tyrion, in Sansa's eyes, it was the worst day of her life. He's a Lannister. She's not going to trust him.
Joffrey, of course, takes great glee in this new relationship and torments both of them, as he usually does.
Time for the bedding ceremony.
There will be no bedding ceremony.
There will be, if I command it.
I'm sure Tyrion did not mean to threaten the king. Your uncle is clearly quite drunk, Your Grace.
Stop.
But your father...
I won't share your bed. Not until you want me to.
What if I never want you to?
And so my watch begins.
Only one old man and 8 good horses. Let's carve him up. We just take the horses and go. The old man's no threat.
There's a storm coming.
Just good a place to shelter as any.
Wildlings.
Bran and Rickon and Osha and Hodor are in the windmill that is just by where Jon is.
Do their paths just miss each other? Neither of them know that they're there.
Cut his throat, or he'll tell the crows we're here.
The man, has to be killed, and Tyrell who suggests that it should be Jon who does it to prove that he's a wildling.
Kill him!
Orell and Tormund are about to kill Jon when 2 direwolves attack. It's Bran who goes into his warg mode and into summer to attack the wildlings and save Jon.
When we arrive at the phrase, Lord Frey wants to make sure that this wedding happens here and now, before we go back to war, or so that's what we're led to believe.
If you think the time is right, Lord Walder, by all means, let us bed them.
As the bedding party exits, the lights dim.
Then literally as the door closes, the band strike up. And that is what makes Catelyn turn around and think, what is going on here? Something is about to happen.
Arya completely believes that she's going home. She's with one of the most powerful guys she's ever met, and he actually is trying to help her.
This is our chance of getting into the wedding by using the salt pork wagon.
Turn this cart around and get the hell out of here.
Lord Walder then stops the proceedings.
Roose Bolton comes over to the table and sits beside Catelyn, and that's when the enormity of the situation strikes him. This sea of arrows come at them, and Walder Frey is basically enjoying every moment of this.
Just as we were coming in, everyone was killing each other.
She realizes everything's going wrong, and she doesn't even know why.
So it was time to change the plan. Plan B, get the hell out there.
It's too late.
The Hound at the last minute managed to just grab her from behind and knock her out.
At the same time, Catelyn's trying to say to her son, get out, but he won't leave his dying wife.
Mother.
Roose Bolton walks up to Robb and whispers something in his ear and then stabs him.
The Lannisters send their regards.
She just loses it.
When Joffrey gets the news of the Red Wedding, this is the best day of his life.
I walk into the small council chamber and everyone else sort of knows what has happened. I don't.
Killed a few puppies today?
Robb Stark is dead.
Joffrey loves every second of it.
Command Lord Frey to send Robb Stark's head. I'm going to serve it to Sansa at my wedding feast.
She is no longer yours to torment.
Everyone is mine to torment, you little monster.
Monsters are dangerous, and just now, kings are dying like flies.
She finds out that her brother and her mother have been killed.
Sansa.
It is very unexpected. All her hopes are dashed, like every single time. She is pretty bitter.
The usurper Robb Stark is dead, betrayed by his bannerman.
Despite his loss at Blackwater, the threat of Stannis is still present.
From Maester Aemon of the Night's Watch. Their Lord Commander is dead. What he saw beyond the wall, it's coming for all of us.
Stannis appears to be more determined in his desire for the throne.
This war of 5 kings means nothing. The true war lies to the north, my king. Death marches on the wall. Only you can stop him.
So Sam and Gilly head towards the wall together to go back to the Night's Watch.
The Night Fort's closest to Castle Black. It's got a secret sally port. It leads through the wall, right down into the Night Fort.
It's empty.
Let's find a place to sleep.
So they come across Bran and Hodel.
Come with us. We'll walk straight to Castle Black.
Take us north of the wall.
Why in the world would you want to go?
want to. I have to.
No, he comes back to King's Landing, and then, of course, no one recognizes him.
Step aside, country boy.
He makes it up to Cersei, and then he sees her, and they just look at each other. This is really the moment where he really realizes that I'm no longer the same man.
She's ecstatic because she's got the one person she trusts back, but he comes in missing the thing that makes him who he is as a man. They're both a bit like, who are you? You know, there's a lot happened since they haven't seen each other.
After Jon escapes, Ygritte catches up to him.
I have to go home now. I know you won't hurt me.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
Jon survives, and we find him right at the end of season 3, collapsing off his horse and being dragged into Castle Black.
Carry him inside.
And we leave him not knowing whether he'll be safe or not.
Under the cover of nightfall, I send my best men in through a side entrance to the city of Yunkai and have them murder all of the slavers, and so that they can then release all of the slaves. And when she finds that they've been successful, they come back to wait outside the gates of Yunkai to see what the fallout will be. And then the slaves come out, and the person they see is Dany, the woman who's saved them.
Misa! Misa!
The word that comes out of their mouth is Misa, which means mother. And it's this moment that Dany, for the first time, sees what her new dream is going to be, and she realizes the possibility of how many more there are to save. And it's this wonderful moment of them looking to her as a mother and her kind of accepting their love and becoming a leader.
You're Ned Stark's bastard, aren't you? Did I offend you? Sorry.
Technically speaking, a bastard is just any child born out of wedlock.
Lord Eddard Stark is my father.
And Lady Stark is not your mother, making you the bastard.
Medieval societies, including Westeros, tended to be more religious than our modern society, more superstitious in some ways. They knew nothing about genetics or DNA, but they had their own version of it, which is blood. Blood will tell.
I'm just a bastard.
The bastard of Robert of the House Baratheon.
The grand maker of bastards in the Seven Kingdoms is Robert Baratheon. We see about 4 of them being murdered in the opening episode of season 2 when Joffrey sends forth his people to find them. The one who gets away from that slaughter of the innocents, of course, is Gendry, who is one of Robert's older bastards. And Gendry looks very much like the young Robert, something that Ned recognizes the minute he lays eyes on Gendry.
Find anything?
King Robert's bastard son.
Westeros, of course, has a very strong class structure. The small folk, as they're called, they probably produce just as many bastards, if not more, as the noble classes, but they don't have any surnames.
And here we have Bronn, son of...
You wouldn't know him.
The noble houses do have their names, and when they produce bastards, they can't have his father's name, so they give him a bastard name. Very simple declarative names that basically tell you this person has noble blood in them, but they're bastard born.
Half Robert, half lowborn.
And it differs from region to region. In the north, you have snow. In the Vale of Arryn, it's stone. In the Riverlands, it's rivers. In the Westerlands, it's hill. Iron Islands, it's pike. In the Reach, it's flowers. In the area around King's Landing, the name Waters has been used. In the Stormlands, it's storm. And in Dorne, it's sand.
I don't believe you have met Ilaria. This is the Lord Hand, Tywin Lannister, and Cersei Lannister, the Queen Regent.
My lady? Can't say I've ever met a sand before.
Dorne is a very different culture from the rest of Westeros. It's more hedonistic approach to life. They take in many ways a more relaxed approach to life.
Bastards are born of passion, aren't they? We don't despise them in Dorne.
No, how tolerant of you.
Well, the Dornish have different customs, quite a few different customs, one of which is just that bastards aren't looked down upon in the way that they are in the other 6 kingdoms.
People everywhere have their differences. In some places, the highborn frown upon those of low birth.
If you're a bastard, you're nothing here. Whereas in Dorne, we have loads of bastards. I'm surrounded by them. That's my family. I'm one.
I have 10,000 brothers and sisters, and I'm not quite sure what to call you. Ilaria works for everyone else.
Ilaria Sand might be a bastard, but it's quite permissible for her to be the mother of a prince's babies, and no one really thinks twice about this.
What do you do with a bastard child? Every house does something different. Some will raise the bastard child as a member of the family, but the bastard child has no inheritance rights.
A bastard boy with nothing to inherit, off to join the ancient order of the Night's Watch.
A lot of bastards do gravitate to the Wall. Jon Snow is not the only one up there by any means.
Well, they were always welcome on the Wall. No bastard was ever refused a seat there.
Bastards can rise there to officers and command.
Some of you bear the names of proud houses. Others only bastard names and no names at all.
The Wall is a more egalitarian society. Not completely by any means. It still tends to favor the sons of lords and the sons of great houses.
Lord Snow here grew up in a castle, spitting down on the likes of you.
You have Jon Snow, of course, who is probably the most famous bastard in the story. He's right up front, the bastard of Winterfell.
I think Jon did have a choice to join the Night's Watch or not. He actively chose. He went to the Night's Watch to emulate his uncle Benjen, and eventually, I think in his head, to lead. He wanted to lead them.
When Jon first came to Castle Black, he was maybe a little bit spoiled. He was a tough kid, and he was a kid who'd never back down from a fight, but at the same time, he grew up in a castle. He grew up with very high-class people, and even if he was a bastard himself, his best friend was Robb Stark, and he was raised by Ned Stark, and he ended up thriving at Castle Black and becoming a leader for the first time.
None of that would have come to pass, and none of that would have been the way it was if Jon Snow felt that he belonged in Winterfell. Jon Snow's second-class citizenship and Ramsay Snow's second-class citizenship, I mean, these are major kind of driving forces in the story.
Father, welcome home.
Waldo, this is Ramsay Snow, my bastard.
Ramsay Snow is a bastard son of Roose Bolton. Ramsay grew up knowing he was a lord's son, but completely disinherited, not part of the castle life, just living with his mother. But when Roose Bolton's son died, he was all that Roose had left. So there's a tremendous amount of anger and resentment.
I mean, Ramsay has a problematic relationship with his father. I think psychopaths often have problematic relationships with their father.
My mother taught me not to throw stones at cripples, but my father taught me aim for their head.
But his main goal in his life would be to be given the acknowledgement and respect of his father that he's been denied as a bastard his entire life.
He hates being a bastard.
You little bastard.
And he wants to be legitimate, and he wants to kind of impress his father. That's the only thing I think that he wants more than just inflicting pain on people.
The relationship between Roose and Ramsay is in some ways a dark counterpoint to the relationship between Ned Stark and Jon Snow. In both cases, a noble father with a bastard son.
Jon and Ramsay are literally the opposite to each other. You know, Jon's very noble and honourable, and Ramsay is none of those things.
Roose himself is a cold and calculating man, a dispassionate man.
I place far too much trust in you.
But the treatment of the bastard son is very different. Ned keeps Jon Snow at Winterfell, and he's raised with Robb and Bran. He's, for all practical purposes, he's one of Ned's sons.
You are a Stark. You might not have my name, but you have my blood.
Ramsay gets nothing from Roose.
The flayed man is on our banners.
My banners, not yours. You're not a Bolton, you're a Snow.
There's also some analogs here to the Tyrion-Tywin relationship.
What the hell do you know about being a bastard?
All dwarves are bastards in their father's eyes. Let me give you some advice, bastard. Never forget what you are. The rest of the world will not. Wear it like armor, and it can never be used to hurt you.
Unlike many other television shows, this world keeps expanding every year.
In terms of production design, one of the most difficult seasons because there are so many new places that we visit, from Marine, the Dread Fort.
Not just new locations in the same world, but new societies and new cultures.
Having watched this season being shot, I'm convinced it's going to be one of the best we've ever done.
We first see them approaching Marine, which is in Slavers Bay. It's the next town. It's the kind of the final area that she wishes to liberate.
On the way, they see that the road leading up to Marine is lined with dead bodies of children, slave children.
It's a message from the Great Masters.
I'll tell our men to ride ahead and bury them. You don't need to see this.
You will do no such thing. I will see each and every one of their faces.
I think it kind of pushes Dany to see that she really needs to do something about this city, and I think it's kind of like a driving force for her in this series.
Marine is the biggest city that they've yet to come across. It's vast, it dwarfs all their previous cities that they've met on the road.
It feels like a very real, vibrant, old culture, and it also feels like a culture that we've never really seen before. It's a merging of modern and ancient and everything in between, and we fell in love with it the second we saw it.
Whilst she may be able to go through and seemingly fix all of the problems by snapping her fingers and simply getting rid of the problem, if she is going to be the ruler of Westeros, and if she is going to sit on the Iron Throne, then she needs to know what to do once she's on it. And so I think she's using Marine as a way of exploring what kind of a leader she could be.
Oberyn Martell is the second son of a very powerful family in the south of Westeros, in the region of Dorne, which is semi-renegade region, one that's never truly accepted the rule of the Iron Throne. They've always chafed under the yoke of the Lannisters.
Forgive me for staring. I don't see many Lannisters where I'm from.
Oberyn Martell is the ultimate wild card. He's unpredictable, he's dangerous, he's fun and charismatic, and he's completely different from every other character we've encountered on the show.
I would describe Oberyn as a deeply passionate person who is either going to kill you or have sex with you.
I'm here to welcome you to the capital.
Ilaria's son, my paramour. The king's own Uncle Imp, Tyrion, son of Tywin, Lannister.
Ilaria is the paramour, which basically the lover of Oberyn. They come from Dorne. There's no shame there. If you're a bastard, you're nothing here. Whereas we have loads of bastards. I'm surrounded by them. That's my family. I'm one.
Bastards are born of passion, aren't they?
The reason I come to King's Landing is really for revenge. Something that has really shaped his identity is having lost his sister, nephew, and niece, and has given him his sort of like life goal.
The Lannisters aren't the only ones who pay their debts.
Ramsay's a lovely guy, really warm, friendly person. He likes taking walks in the countryside, murdering people, flaying people, torturing people, that kind of thing.
You can see that your presence has become a bit of a problem.
He enjoys doing it. It's not kind of, I'm a bad person. It's like, this is great, I'm really enjoying it. And, you know, that's the sort of key to the character.
The Boltons were notorious in these primitive, barbaric days for taking their enemies and flaying them. Their castle, where these things took place, got the name of the Dreadfort because of the dreadful things that were happening there.
Father, welcome home.
His greatest goal is torturing people. Secondly is needing the love of his father.
You flayed him.
We've been flaying our enemies for 1,000 years. The flayed man is on our banners.
My banners, not yours. You're not a Bolton, you're a Snow.
He hates being a bastard. You know, you see it with Jon Snow as well. It's like, it's used, you know, you're a bastard. You know, you almost don't have a saying. You're like a subservient part of the society.
He thinks he's, you know, a sadistic psycho, as we all do, but then he sees that there's method in his madness, and that he manages to gain very valuable information through his torture of Theon.
From House Tyrell, Your Grace, it is my honour to present you with this wedding cup. May you and my daughter Marjorie drink deep and live long. Mace is described variously by others as an oath, the Lord of Oath. However, in my view, I think he's quite a wise old cookie and he's just bumbling along.
Not now, Mace. Lord Tywin and I are speaking.
She actually can't stand him. He's sort of 2 paces behind everybody all the time, intellectually and physically.
The power in the Tyrell family is with the women, it's with Olenna. So Mace sort of bumbles in and you understand that he's not really where the brains of the mission statement for the family are.
And I am interested in the welfare of my children, by which I mean I want them to sit on the Iron Throne.
Now, we are still south of the wall, and we are waiting for Mance's orders because we lost Orell, our warg, so we can't see anymore. So we are pretty lost out there. And then suddenly the Thenns show up.
Thenns. I fucking hate Thenns.
Magnar of Thenns. It means king. In this word, you can feel this character, actually, Magnar.
Stir. He is Then boss. He's the most intimidating, actually, because I think he's got most of the scars on his head, so he's also like a brutal killer.
I know we've had our differences, but just one time, before you die, you really ought to try Crow.
They're cannibals. They look gruff, they look incredibly intimidating and scary.
They are eating human bodies. It's something between an animal and a human being.
I'll answer to Mance. I won't answer to you.
It's Mance's orders, and they are great fighters, and that's what matters now. The wildlings and all the free folks they're fighting for their life as well. When the winter is getting close and the White Walkers are getting closer.
It's time. It's by far and away the most action-packed sequence we've done.
It involves a much heavier visual effects component because of the giants and the mammoths and the walls.
It's just one of those episodes that we've been excited for quite some time, and when we finally saw it put together, it's just exceeded expectations.
In the great tradition of Game of Thrones, episode 9s, it's the episode where a lot of stuff goes down.
The biggest armies ever assembled, 100 of us, 100,000 of them. Very exciting stuff.
It's carnage.
It's just a huge production.
If you give a guy a sword and say, like, just play around, it can't be better.
Episode 409 is similar to episode 209, the Blackwater episode. It's contained to one location. That said, it's much more involved than Blackwater was.
The big challenge is just finding time to do everything, because there's so many action beats that you want, and the action beats are always the most time intensive.
It's so logistically complicated. There's so many aspects to it, and I've not really done VFX on this level before.
From a planning perspective, it was just completely epic, is the only way to describe it.
The production necessitates us to actually plan it as you would plan any battle, to figure out who does what to whom when.
Tráilers. Visita mi canal.
Stick with a plan to be able to provide the element that the visual effect needs, and been prepping for the past 3 months.
The episode breaks down into several different elements. I mean, we have the Castle Black battle, which is a very practical element. It's all on set here. You know, we have this beautiful set and we're using it to maximum effect. Then we have a sequence just on top of the wall, for which they've built a brand new set. And then we have a very strong green screen element, which we're shooting in a field with this army coming out of the forest.
There's a big clearing for the tree line, and that has a 400-foot by 30-foot green screen.
The key to making this thing work is communication and making sure that everybody knows, everybody's on the same page. You know, and that boils down to the script, you know, in a very literal way.
You're reading this script and Mag the Mighty's riding this mammoth. And then you've got Dongo the Doomed with spools of chains as big as ship's anchors. You go, you know, how the fuck are they going to do that?
We had discussed from the outline stage what our options were in terms of creature effects, and there are, over the years, have been mammoths or things like them have been done in different ways.
We know kind of what it looks like because we have renderings and skeletons of authentic mammoths. But how do we actually shoot that? And how do we put a giant sitting on top of it? And then how do we set it on fire? What we ultimately decided on was that we'd have more flexibility and a better look if we did it CG. But we wanted to have as much of it be in camera and photographed as possible.
It takes place mostly, you know, against green screen environments because we don't have a 700-foot ice wall to play with. We shoot the human element separately, then we shoot the giants separately, and then we add the mammoth in on top of that. What makes it so complicated is that it's 3 different scales. That we have regular human scale, we have giant scale, which is that we have very tall actors playing the giants, but even then they're still only half scale, so we have to make them twice the size.
The production cast the tallest and the second tallest guy in the UK to play the giants. And it wasn't that we needed the height necessarily, it was that the way a tall person moves is different than the way you and I move. Mag, king of the giants, the actor is nearly 8 feet tall, but his body moved in a certain way because of that, and so he would scale up believably.
And then the mammoth itself, well, that's going to be 100% CG, so that's a different scale altogether, and that needs to be incorporated as the last element. It's easily the most complicated thing I've ever shot.
The first consideration when you think about shooting a big action scene involving a mammoth or anything that's not actually going to be there on the day is how do you keep extras from running through it? How do you keep a space open in a big action scene to insert the missing creature?
We have this giant space frame, or as Neil calls it, the cheese wedge.
We talked about putting it on a vehicle, on a turntable or something, and then I said, why don't we just make it with legs, and 4 guys pick it up and carry it around.
It looked absolutely ridiculous, but it was exactly the right thing.
In post, the guys can see exactly where it's moving, and when they build the digital mammoth to go over that.
How to get the giant riding on a mammoth? Well, we created a motion base with a buck on it that is a sort of like a mechanical bull. It was a section of mammoth with fur on it that the giant in costume sat on, and the camera is motion controlled so that when you put it all together, you've got a giant riding a mammoth and charging at the ice wall.
That's how it's going to affect the characters. They've never seen anything like that. They've never seen fire like that before. It's just the scale is awe-inspiring.
One of the terrific notes that Dan and David had early on was how do you see where all the players are? And what Joe came up with was this fantastic shot that starts with the Thens dousing their fire and cutting to a very high angle shot, traveling, looking down over the Thens as they're leaving their camp, over the top of Castle Black, over the top of the wall, and across to reveal the wildlings coming out of the tree line and the greatest fire that ever was.
As Mance Rayder says, the greatest fire the North has ever seen is raging north of the wall, so we have to add in all this burning sky and clouds and things in the background, and that's where VFX, comes in incredibly handy.
The greatest fire is made of a lot of elements taken from photography of real forest fires. There's some CG fire involved, but it's probably 70 or 80 layers just of practical fire. And then, the layers of smoke that tell you the scale, which is the size and the distance of the fire. So if the smoke is barely moving, you know it's really big and really far away.
There hasn't been an attack on the wall of this scale in thousands of years, and you definitely want the audience to feel that. It's the biggest army in Westeros history coming for Jon and for his friends.
There were enough wildlings to get all of the medium and tight coverage, and the rest of it is why we had a 400-foot green screen. We would shoot multiple plates of the several hundred wildlings that we had, and we added the other 999,000 wildlings.
The first wave are the wildlings attacking as if they're going to climb the wall.
All the business in front of the gate was handled in the photography by Stewart's team. What we did was connect the wall to the practical set, drop the digital barrels from the top.
There's two types of barrels. There's barrels full of stones and ice and barrels full of oil. We've done some different explosions to create those effects.
We bury mortars in the ground, air mortars normally, so we can give a big blast of whatever we want up out of the ground and just create a much bigger, safer explosion.
The first one, we used a lot of fake ice and put some snow in there. We had lightweight materials because that was being fired by compressed air at people.
This is like shrapnel going to cut through the people and they get shredded. So that is really just stunt guys taking bullet hits as it was fake, just dropping fast and hard to the ground. We're going to do fire barrels dropping. These would be CG barrels, but we will have napalm fire bursters on the ground to simulate the fire.
The second ones are the fire ones, which are various types of fuel in there to create fireballs and fire debris landing around on the ground.
Some Romanian stunt guys flew in just to be engulfed in flames, and they were awesome.
We'll glue them up, ready to go, and hopefully that will catch them and they'll go up. They'll have the fire underwear on and gel on their faces.
Quite often in an explosion, everything goes up. But to make it last longer and to give a more of a wall of fire, we have charges that go out in a fan shape. The explosion goes straight out towards the camera and then goes up.
This scene then continues to one of them being dragged by the mammoth. This we'll just do on a rig, set him afire, and he'll just hold on for a certain distance onto the road as if being dragged.
We put a rig onto the back of a pickup truck just to get the height, the elevation so it's the right angle, as if the rope is attached to the mammoth harness, and that's what it'll look like when you see it.
Action! We did ourselves a favor in only lighting the mammoth's butt on fire, which is probably 30 feet of fire, so we didn't have to render a bunch of burning fur.
The battle this season takes place at the base of the wall, it takes place on top of the wall, and we've got explosions happening all over.
So far in all the episodes, the top of the wall has only been hinted at as a few trenches and this, that and the other. So this time around we need something a lot more elaborate, and we've built this massive set down at the Paint Hall in Belfast.
We've done sections at the top of the wall before, but it's only ever been a much smaller scale, and I think this is a set they wanted to build for season 1, and now we're on season 4, and it's a very important sequence. They just went out, spent the money and built it. It's a huge set built, raised above the ground. It's got a network of tunnels, like the top of the wall, as someone has imagined would have.
What we have is a fantastic sort of series of ice trenches, basically, where the battle is fought.
You can lose yourself up there. The set is so big that, you actually, you can get lost in it.
There's a face to those trenches so that you see over, down to the 700 feet, presumably, of what would take you down to Castle Black or across to the north. The thing about Castle Black is it has a very distinct look. It has very distinct colours, very distinct sort of use of timbers. And so we add the type of timbers that are typical to Castle Black that will hopefully, you know, convince everybody that these timbers were hoisted up there by the Night's Watch.
We've made some sort of barrel ramps. We've obviously got pitch barrels and pitch pots. We've got braziers and flambeaux up there because when they get the arrows, they've got to put them into the fire and fire them. We've got a fantastic hall. We're going to snow it up and ice it up and weather it like it's been up there for a long time.
It's probably maybe 4 or 5 feet, kind of height-wise and lengthwise, so it's quite a substantial horn. I don't know if anybody's tried blowing it yet, so I don't know what it'll sound like.
The good thing about the top of the wall set is it's actually on a raised platform. I imagine so they can get a lot of low-angled shots. So to be up there away from the rest of the crew on the floor, you do feel like you're engaged in something up there completely separate from everything that's going on around you. And you need a decent head for heights while you're up there because it's actually quite a high set. So you don't feel very secure because you're having to act literally on precipices like that.
They've got a green screen underneath, and you look down the edge of the wall, and you've got these dots of snow that have come from the snow machines. And actually, when you think about it, those dots are probably the size of people, and you get a bit of a vertigo feeling, and you look at it and you go, wow, you know, it's not difficult to imagine.
The top of the wall is a real united effort for special effects, visual effects, art department, camera, etc. Visual effects is merely extending the set, so with views where we see either direction along the length of it, obviously we're extending it.
We're in a studio, we're in a stage, a massive set. We've got barrels rolling off the top of the wall on fire.
We drop roll barrels off a system there, and one of them gets stuck at the end. So one of the stunt guys, as the Night Watch, will go out as if he's trying to prod the barrel off, and this will explode up in his face. Next, we're going to have a couple of Night Watch that are just eased out on ropes so they can fire their arrows straight down.
We have these archers who, in order to fire vertically down the wall, they are lowered over the edge on kind of bungees.
They're belayed from behind by another Night Watch guy, and one of these Night Watch guys will get hit by one of the explosions, let go of the rope, and the other guy will just fall to his death below. And then that would be continued probably on a green screen element of him falling 700 feet.
When you start researching medieval fighting and the things that people have created, there's a lot of horrible genius involved.
There's a sequence involving the scythe, which is this crazy weapon that Dan and David came up with.
We dug our heels in on that one, cut some corners elsewhere to be able to afford it.
There's a huge chain with a blade on it that swings down and literally decimates these guys on the wall.
It's just big and heavy and ice covered, and it doesn't get released very often, and it makes mincemeat of anybody it hits.
We will do a climbing section and reactions, and then this will be replaced with blood bursts, and this comped together with visual effects will take them off.
It's very effective, but I would think it would be a bitch to reset.
Hoist her up!
We joined the wildling attack on Castle Black kind of mid-attack. They just storm in, and we were with them with the camera, running down the road.
Screaming and fighting in like full energy all the time.
I was in the middle of it, and it completely was like, wow, is this really going? It was crazy, yeah.
You're so focusing on what you have to do, then you're totally oblivious to like the 100 people swishing past your ear.
We built the castle in season 1, and it stood up well over the last 4 years at the time, but to actually physically climb it, it's not actually practical, so we had to do a fair number of cheats. We added wooden struts to places where we could climb up. We used grappling hooks to climb over, which are then tied and anchored in the other side once we'd thrown them up.
I'm such a bad climber that Paul had to come underneath and just like push me up, so he had to be out of shot. Like, I was climbing, but I really wasn't.
There are kind of 3 worlds in this episode. There's the foot of the wall in the north, there's the top of the wall, and there's the courtyard. And when the giant shoots the giant-sized torpedo arrow, it picks the Night's Watchman up, carries him through the air over the top of the wall and down into the middle of the courtyard where the battle's raging all around him. It was just such a smart way on Neil Marshall's part to connect the worlds in one continuous series of shots.
The wall is 700 feet high, so regular arrows from the wildling below can't reach. But giant arrows from the giants can reach, and it was my idea to give one of them a bow and arrow, and he's able to shoot to the top of the wall with that, which the regular wildlings can't do. So it's kind of like heavy artillery.
Stewart's team blew part of the set apart with the right force and trajectory as if it had been hit by a giant arrow.
Very difficult effect because there was no arrow there to blow the top off. The arrow was added in post. So we had to make the top blow off and be a repeatable effect.
For the night watch, poke their head over to see if they can fire her down again after that. It's followed by a second arrow from the giant, which lifts him and takes him up. For this, we will be using a jerk rig.
For the guy landing with Dongo's arrow in him, we built a rig which had the arrow that was going through him into the ground was steel.
This is a special effects rig which they developed. It's just a hydraulic rig on a plate.
We have an air ram, basically, buried in the ground 2 foot in solid rock, which wasn't easy.
We have our stunt performer. He lays on that, we dress the costume around him, and we just have to make sure that his action feels real and believable.
My most difficult location to shoot in would have to be Castle Black Courtyard.
I'll never forget the first time that they took me up to Castle Black. Such a beautiful, well-conceived set. And just seeing the sequences that Neil's been shooting over the past few nights, it's fantastic.
It's so real, it's so convincingly put together. When you're standing in here, you could be in the Himalayas, you could be in Westeros. It's just a real environment.
It's very detailed, you know, everything feels like it's of the world.
It's enormous. It's there. It exists.
It is gigantic, and there's everything that you need in here. I mean, you could live here. I mean, the rain doesn't come through. It's brilliant. There's no leaks.
The gates work, everything, the walls. It's just, there are even rooms back there. Even the lift, the elevator, is a fully working elevator.
In season 1, me and John Bradley got stuck in that lift, so it doesn't always work.
If they want to spend the money on frightening us like that, then so be it, really.
This is a great set. It's one of the best sets I've ever been on, because that's what this world is about. It's the northern edge of civilization. It's rough, it's grim, and when it rains up here, it gets grim.
Based on my past experience, you come to Game of Thrones, you come here to Magramorn, you have to expect the worst. You know, we filmed for nearly 3 weeks of solid rain on Blackwater, and what happened this time was we kind of got 3 weeks worth of rain on Monday night, and the whole set flooded while we were filming in it.
It started off as a puddle, then it turned into a pond, and people were literally wading through, you know, water deep up to your shins.
We had the pumps going, and it was just torrential. It was just unbelievable.
We couldn't afford to stop shooting, so basically we said that we just go for it in post-production now with the miracle of technology.
Y tus trailers, visita mi canal.
Painting out rain is a really tricky thing. You know, adding rain, not so bad. Adding snow, not so bad. Removing rain, tough.
You will not fall tonight!
I'm soaked through from head to toe, but I've never had so much fun getting completely wet and dirty.
I mean, it is for real, this weather, you know, but it's great for the show, and, you know, there's a real camaraderie.
We're all in the same situation, everybody. You're always getting wet, and it's not like you're sitting in a comfortable trailer.
We don't have caravans just off set here and the actors lounging around. Once we come up in the trucks into the quarry, we're stuck up here under these medieval buildings, and there's no real restroom.
The extras, you know, they get stuck in just as anybody else does. The Northern Irish local lads are not very precious at all, and they're always up for a laugh, and they facilitate the scene fantastically.
They get a lot more responsibility than extras on some shows, because they're doing a lot of action beats and they're on camera quite a bit, not just, you know, in the deep background, but right there in the front.
I think there's about 40 or 50 of them today, and there's 20 stunt guys training them. So for the last couple of weeks, they've taken them from being enthusiastic but with no idea how to handle a sword into somebody who can use a sword. And the credibility of the scene just goes way up.
Once you call action, it really feels like, you know, as close as you can be to a real medieval battle. So.
We definitely, when we're writing the scripts, try to be as descriptive as possible to give Paul and CC and our fight team as much story tools to work with, but then we let them have it, and you know, they know what they're doing. They're the best in the world at this.
From the writers at the beginning, we have the basis of the fights, what they want to incorporate. Then my swordmaster, CC, develops those fights a bit more.
The stunt guys have put something together, I'll go around and have a little look at it and maybe change it. Too many kicks or too many spins or whatever. I don't like too many spins. Not for this show anyway, it's the realism.
When we shoot the big wide shots of everyone fighting together in the courtyard, it blows you away. It's difficult to understand how everyone keeps track of what everyone is doing.
With the main fights, we had 2 weeks to do that, on and off when we could get hold of Kit, Jon Snow, Sir Alistair, Owen, Tormund, Christoph, he come in as well.
We have been rehearsing a lot in the stunt tent many days.
CC is a joy. His managerial skills are pretty good too. When you've got 60 people running around with swords, yeah, you need somebody who's in control.
But this year was a little bit different. I built the fights with the actors. I had in mind what I wanted to do, but I wanted it to suit them, and it worked really, really well.
Cici and I tried to create Tormund's fighting style. It's a mixture between regular sword fight and capoeira and a real Viking style, like a berserk. This is maybe one of the most ambitious fights I've ever done.
The fighting in these conditions is tough because it's literally a lot of wet wood that you're running along.
It's a huge amount of work because if you miss one beat, bam, you have a sword in your head.
Christopher's very light on his feet for a big guy, and they put the roll in as well, which was nice.
He's almost like a ballet dancer when you actually see behind the scenes what he can do.
He's an enthusiastic guy, and he's a Viking, basically. He's jumping in the air and throwing it around, and we got to start taking it a little easier.
It was Owen's idea to hold onto the post to swing round, just to add a little bit of life to it there.
The fight moves are always amazing. They're always executed incredibly, but they never lose sight of the story, and they never lose sight of what the scene dramatically is trying to achieve.
We've set up Thorn as he's a bit of a son of a bitch.
He's made these guys' lives hell, but now their backs against the wall, they're being invaded. It's to the death, and it's very much his moment, yeah.
With me!
What we liked about the character was the idea that you can be a really horrible person in some respects, but also maybe very brave.
Owen's performance of Thorn really makes you feel viscerally what Thorn is made of.
He steams into this battle, and then he singles out Tormund, and they engage in this like absolutely ferocious sword fight.
Well, the fight is two bad guys meeting each other, and it's going to be interesting to see who they will sympathize with.
There's one shot midway through the episode, which is a 360. The camera goes all the way around, and you see about 5 different action beats, and they all have to be timed out perfectly.
I knew I had to do a big action sequence in here, and I had so many ideas of what to do. It is a 360-degree set. There is no gaps. There's nothing to suggest it's not real. So I thought, well, let's do something that encompasses that somehow.
It's such a wonderful tying together of every person who's in that space who means something to us.
There's a certain point in the plot that will lead it from Jon Snow, taking Ygritte on the wall, taking Tormund, taking Styr, and come round to Samwell and actually, tell a story in the shot as well.
It's always quite nerve-wracking to do a shot that is so complicated and takes in so many actors and so many stunts, because if you get it wrong, everybody has to do it again.
C.C. Smith, who designed that fight and designed every bit of it, had it down to a T.
There was a lot to do there. We spent a morning rehearsing that, and we did a few changes on the night.
Visita
but
mi
the guys
canal.
on the crane were amazing.
For me, the biggest challenge is to do something that's gonna stay, that is gonna be strong enough, that it's not gonna be cut out. So the way we did it is like make it fast.
My biggest concern was whether the camera was going to hit anybody, because the speed that it had to travel, it's a very heavy object on the end of a crane, and if somebody gets in its way, they're going to get hurt.
It takes a bit of rehearsals to make everything work, because there's a lot of things going on.
My first AD, Mark, he just called out a series of numbers. Each segment of the shot had a number, and each number, when you call out the number, that's their cue to do what they're going to do.
Usually Mark Taylor, the AD, is calling out numbers. He's saying 1, 2, 3, 4, and he must have made it to 19 with this shot because there were that many individual action cues to take you around the circle.
You have to start the process of people fighting. The people behind are not fighting, otherwise they'll be exhausted by the time the camera gets to them and the fighting to die down.
When you know that the camera's swished past you, you can then look at everything else happening because you know that you're no longer kind of being watched. And it was just brilliant seeing everyone start up at the right time, and it's like, right, now it's you, now it's you, now it's you. And it was real teamwork.
Every department was absolutely on their game, and it gives you just a pride to pull off something like that when everybody's so on it.
There are dozens of fights literally happening all around all the time, especially once you get down into the courtyard, and they all needed to be choreographed and synced with one another. But obviously Kit's the centerpiece of the episode.
At a certain point in the battle, when it looks like, all hope is lost for Castle Black, Jon Snow comes down in the elevator and he kind of just literally jumps out into the fray.
Neil is one of the most efficient directors I've ever worked with. He knows what he wants and he gets it. And he puts a lot of trust into you as an actor to turn up to a scene and know what you're doing.
It's very rare to find somebody who is both has the acting chops that Kit has and is a real action hero. I mean that in the best way, like he's the complete package.
He's like Errol Flynn or something. He's so graceful and balletic. When you're watching it, you just admire how elegant somebody can be on their feet whilst hacking somebody to pieces.
Kit takes it like a duck to water. He's absolutely superb in his fighting style and being able to remember all the moves.
Kit and Yuri worked so well together, and it's the first time Yuri's really done something like that, and that huge axe.
He's a big man with a big axe.
I never fight with a huge axe, and I'm a tall guy, and it's pretty hard for me, you know, to use all my long arms and legs. It was just working every day.
That fight is a double-edged axe versus Jon Snow's long claw, and it's sort of a more powerful man versus maybe a quicker man. So it's quite an interesting fight to choreograph. By the end, you see the more powerful man start winning. He's got a weapon which can easily disarm a sword. It's built for that, and Jon Snow gets disarmed.
Poor old Jon, he's getting his face smashed in and he gets thrown through this fire.
Kit wanted to go through it, but we had a double to go through.
Insurance implications we have to have a stunt double to throw through. We can't throw our actor actually through the fire.
And in the end of the fight, he has to resort to somewhat dirty tactics. I take his leg out with a hammer, and the final killing blow is a hammer to the top of the skull.
It's a ball-peen hammer that Jon Snow uses to kill him, and it ends up buried in the top of his skull. We have a prosthetic that where it's sticking out the top of his head and all this blood pours down.
That will be all the prosthetics here. Then they will make the prosthetics of this scars on that prosthetic of my head.
What's interesting at the end of the steer fight is he's learned that the honourable way to fight is not necessarily the way you win, which is a big part of Game of Thrones. So to see Jon learning that means it bodes better for him than it does for his father, I think. If he's willing to spit in someone's eye, he might actually have a chance of making it through this world.
This battle is one that we've been planning for a long time, and we have these actors that we love, Joseph Alton as Pip and Mark Stanley as Gren, and while neither of the characters die in the books, it felt like we had to have some casualties amongst the people that we really care about here.
We knew we were going to lose Ygritte and some of the wildlings, but we really needed to lose some people on the Night's Watch side that we had grown to care about over the last few seasons.
This episode is a regular slaughterhouse. We're killing off a few favourites.
When I read the episodes, I got to episode 9, so you're reading it through and you're turning every page going, do I make it? Who makes it? And you're thinking, they're gonna bump some people off, and then they kill Pip, and you're like, oh no, man.
As an actor, my favourite part of the episode was obviously the death scene, because I got to do a lot more in it.
Joseph really nailed it from the first take, and trying to shoot something in a very raw way of not controlling it too much. It's just standing back and just letting these two characters who've spent the past 3 seasons together sort it out amongst themselves, that one of them is dying and the other one is helpless.
2 or 3 times we kind of rehearsed it, and then we just kind of went for it.
He really made it quite easy for me to feel that slipping away.
When actors deliver performances that good, it becomes painful to watch.
People talk about the violence in this show, but we treat it very maturely. We don't trivialise anything. And the violence in that particular scene will be very, very shocking. You get to see the physical toll that an arrow through the throat really takes on somebody. They bleed to death in agony.
Great scene to do, dying scene. Played a great part. A tricky part, lining an arrow up with your entry and exit. Never easy to do. Our part in it's really pumping blood. The hose was up through the leg and then up through the costume and into the prosthetic. And our part in that was making it go as gory as possible, pouring on blood.
The outer gate won't hold. Take 5 men. Hold the inner gate. Hold the gate. If they make it through.
Gren's battle with the giant, you think, yeah, he's going to make it, and it just says you find them both dead. I was like, no, man, you can't kill Gren.
When I read it, I was like, the bastards, they've written me out, I couldn't believe it. But then I thought, well, if we're ever going to go, might as well go in a heroic way. To be fair, fighting the king of the giants, I'll take that.
Gren dies bravely holding the gate against Magnemite, one of the great giants that Mance has unleashed.
We find ourselves at the inner gate, and the giant has taken away the outer gate, so we're looking at a distance of about 20 metres. We're screaming at such high range and putting everything into it that we thought that our voices would go.
The way that Neil seamlessly weaves all these pieces together to create the perfect illusion that this 14-foot tall person is charging down a tunnel at a bunch of 5'6" people is very impressive.
At times the giant will be shot live action in front of green screen where we'll be able to scale him up.
The other thing is that we scale the sets down. We've shot some sequences with our regular actors in the real scale tunnel, but we've also built a half-scale tunnel, and we're putting our 7-foot actor in the half-scale tunnel.
When they cut away, they'll be going to the miniature set of this 7-foot guy that's trying to squeeze through it.
So we're shooting basically the same shot in both sets, one with the real actors and one with the giant, and then later on they're going to be matched together.
But what you end up with is a 7-foot guy who reaches the roof of a 8-foot tunnel, which is meant to be a 16-foot tunnel. It's I guess it's complicated.
I am the shield! The guard surrounds me! I pledge my life! And no less in the night's watch! For this night and all the nights to come!
Genuinely sad for us when we kill off characters. We're not doing it. It's not fun, except in the rare occasion, rare occasions, but for the most part it's actually really depressing.
Obviously we have a major moment in this episode with the loss of Ygritte.
She's been talking all season that she wants to kill Jon Snow, and how dare he abandon me in the way that he did, how dare he abuse the trust in the way that he did. But of course, when she sees him, she can't control the feelings of love that she has for Jon Snow, and that's a real fight within her.
As much as she feels betrayed by Jon, and as much fury as she feels, there's also real love there.
She has to love him a lot to be as angry at him as she is.
It's all in the script. I mean, Dave and Dan are, brilliant, absolutely brilliant, intelligent writers, and so everything is there as an actor. What you need is right there on the page.
He's just come through a huge battle. He's almost died. He turns around and he sees the one person he's ever truly loved. I think even though she's pointing an arrow at him, even though they're in the middle of a battle, there's something incredibly joyous about that moment.
I think for her, hesitating seeing Jon Snow is purely, oh my God, the last time I saw you, you were running away from me and here you are. And I thought I didn't love you anymore, but I do.
He doesn't care if that arrow drills through his chest. Right at that moment, he's happy. Until he's not.
And then bam.
It's a kind of bittersweet ending for them both. It was never going to end happily, and one of them was going to die, I think.
I think she's incredibly brave about it. She's realizing that she's going to die, and she's thinking about the cave. She's like, why the hell did we leave that cave?
The shot of Jon cradling Ygritte in his arms is my favorite shot of the episode.
We very, very rarely do slow motion. We don't like slow motion. It tends to feel self-conscious, but this one shot, when we saw it in the director's cut, we loved it.
What Neil and David Franco did with this shot, where it just completely brings you into Jon's consciousness, and you're experiencing this moment as he's experiencing it. It's beautiful and heartbreaking.
For Jon, it was incredibly sad. And Rose Leslie won't be in Thrones anymore, and it's sort of, you kind of got that kind of baggage along with it as well.
I think the idea that Ygritte is gone from the world is almost as difficult for Jon as the idea that Rose Leslie is no longer on the show is difficult for us.
When you've worked with these people for so long and so closely, and then you know that this inevitable death is coming, it's very hard, actually.
We've all grown together and acted in some great scenes together, and I couldn't have asked for any more than that.
Given the fact that this show seems to do episode 9s quite well, it's actually very, very flattering that they think that we can hold that attention in that narrative for an hour. It really makes you bring your A game to it.
It really is a huge team effort, especially on an episode of this scope and this much importance in the overall narrative of our story. And it's been an absolute joy to work on.
From the moment we saw Neil's first director's cut, we knew he had done a fabulous job. I mean, that's not always the case with things that are very effects driven. Sometimes you don't know exactly what you've got until the shots start to come in, and it's been a joy watching the shots come in. But the bones were so solid from the beginning that we always knew that this one was going to be pretty intense.
We've seen a lot of battles. We haven't seen too many battles with giants and woolly mammoths pulling gates off. And we really wanted it. It's just one of the things that sets this world apart from all the other worlds we've seen. And, it's just kudos to the crew and congratulations to the best VFX team in the business.
Being here, this is the Game of Thrones memorial panel those of you who we lost in season 4. And just wanted to start at the beginning for all of you. What was it like coming into this huge and epic a show? I just realized that some of you might have just been meeting for the first time.
Jack and I have just met as in 20 seconds ago.
Yeah,
wonderful.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
It was amazing. It was a wonderful handshake.
Very good, very good. So what was, I guess we can start with you, Pedro.
Why are you going to start with me?
Because you're,
Because I'm sitting directly across. You've been looking straight at me and I'm like, I'm going to get the first question, aren't I?
As an anchor.
Great.
But you're the newest kid on the block in season 4 and snatched away.
Big in, big out.
Yeah. What was it like? Had you seen the show before you started?
I had seen every episode, so coming in, I felt like I knew more about the show than everyone on the show. You know what I mean?
That's true. What was your first day? What was the first scene you had to shoot?
A 6-page scene with Peter Dinklage.
Oh,
and a monologue and stuff like that.
So when you're telling the story of meeting Tyrion as a baby.
Meeting him and seeing him as a baby and like
that's
becoming
a lot of text.
and becoming his ally and telling him that I would fight for him.
I will be your champion.
And Jack, you've been with us, I think, longer than anybody here. You date back to the very original pilot.
Yeah, I was very, very intimidated when I went on. It was such a big scene to begin with. I think it was the scene where all the Lannisters and Baratheons go to the Stark house. So right from the get-go, you know, I was kind of thrown into just meeting everyone and kind of getting to grips with, first of all, riding a horse. Yeah, I'd never ridden a horse before. And it was actually quite a nice atmosphere.
One thing that's lovely about your performance and your interpretation of Joffrey, and I can actually put this question to Charles as well, is that you're both villains in the piece, but neither of you approach that at all, and I think it really shows in the characterization.
Yeah, I mean, you want, not for there to be sympathy or empathy, but perhaps just that it's not so black and white. So that's a fun kind of tension for me to play, someone who's so kind of perhaps superficially evil, you know, to see his motivations and perhaps just humanize him a bit.
Tywin's a kind of emotional desert, really. But it's kind of great fun to play because Tywin is king of this lot, really.
And I think he does know that.
Cool,
Joffrey does.
King, but you know, I mean.
What was your first day on set? Which was it couldn't have been the stag scene. Was that your first?
No, that was the second one. The first one was in a tent. It was in a tent that was in a field at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
Bitterly cold. And I thought, why are we in this tent? There are no shots outside the tent. This tent could be set up on the studio floor and we could all be warm. Instead of freezing our asses off in the middle of this field, 20 miles outside of Belfast.
Welcome to Game of Thrones.
But, you know, the end result, like all of the stuff in this, I mean, it looks absolutely sensational. And then David and Dan came to my trailer one day and said, "Are you vegetarian, Charles?" And I said, "No, why do you ask?" And they said, "You ever butchered a deer before?" I said, "No." So this guy came in with a dead animal and a selection of knives, and we skinned the deer.
But that's one of the great character introductions on the show.
It was terrific.
Rosie, what was your first day? What were your first experience coming onto the show?
Actually, my introduction was also the character's introduction as well. It was our first day, and it was the capture of Ygritte by Jon Snow, and it was that scene whereby it's the most beautiful, just sensational backdrop over the glacier.
Was that the glacier that cracked and everyone had to...
No, that was the lake. So I think this was at the end of season 2, and we were shooting on a lake, and then we decided to take a crew photo in the middle of a frozen lake, and we heard this deep rumble, this deep crack, and everybody just fends for themselves, and like people are pushing past each other. We're like, fuck yeah!
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a good way to break the ice.
Indeed. No, that was very good. Very good.
That's that wicked humor.
You can keep that.
And Mark, I mean, you've obviously shot in Iceland as well, but I think your first day, if I remember correctly, was unusually hot Castle Black Day.
Yeah, it was boiling hot. It was August. We were all in our furs and stuff, our cloaks. And it was John Bradley having his arse beaten.
That's right, it was the introduction of Samwell. It was his first...
Was that John's first day as well?
It probably was.
Yeah, it was actually, yeah. I think it was John, Luke's and mine first job, first day. On set ever. Anyway.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great.
You sure you want to do this?
No.
And Sibel, what was your first day on the show?
I was topless. I met Peter, so it was in a tent,
And I really questioned myself also, I asked myself, why are they shooting here, on a field? It was so cold, and I was topless, and I was like, oh God, what I'm doing here.
But it was all uphill from there, right? And Tom, well, you came in into season 3.
Yeah, I came in season 3, so everything had kind of already been established, which was kind of nervy as well, because I knew it was quite a big show, and I was expecting it to be a bit of a machine, which it is really, and big cast, big crew. So I didn't really know what to expect. And I just hung out in the bar afterwards, and everyone was just really cool and very welcoming. And
Who was hanging around the bar? No one asked me. Is that right? Do you drink alcohol? No.
No. Not when you're working. Not while we're filming.
No, just hang around the bar.
Yeah.
Watch others do it.
Yeah, sparkling water.
Yeah, sparkling water and chat.
You probably have all had some interesting fan encounters over the years. Can you speak to that?
There was a guy, we were crossing the road, it was this year actually, I think it probably in October, and we were with Kit, and this Irish guy came over to us and are you Kit? You're Kit, are you? Yeah, I am, yeah, very humbly, I am, yeah. You're Jon Snow? He's like, yeah, and he looks at him, takes a second look, and he's like, no way, you're too fucking short to be Jon Snow. And ran off up the street.
Anybody else have any interesting fan encounters?
I learned about my death from a fan. Really.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
That's how you found out. I was going to ask. Yeah. How?
Because I'm afraid I haven't read any of the books at all. Well, they're that thick. They're rather frightening. It alarms me when I'm confronted with a book of that size. And a guy came up to me in the street in London. He said, "Game of Thrones, fucking great." I said, "Oh, well, thank you very much." He said, "You got a great death scene." I said, "Have I really? What is the manner of my death?" You see. Anyway, and he told me, and I thought, "Oh yeah, that's what I've got to look forward to."
Your manager.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yes.
But did you know you were going to die at a certain point when we?
No, I had absolutely no idea.
No. That's so funny.
No.
We'll get to the death scenes in a minute. We'll discuss those in detail. But any other, before we kind of move on to the death side of things in the end, are there any particular favorite moments you had over the course of the season?
Yeah, I have many. I'll pick one. Shooting an orgy that gets interrupted by Charles.
Something like you, Charles?
That was one of my... That was one of my favorite days on set.
Yeah.
One of the actors, she wouldn't wear her robe. Do you remember?
Yes, she just wandered around.
So we're in the green room, and playing Words with Friends or something with David, and Charles is reading the paper, and next to him is a completely naked person. And Charles has the paper, and she's trying to talk with him, and he's like. And he looks up at me and he's like, Charles, a naked woman.
Yeah.
David Benioff, Words with Friends.
Yeah. You never thought you'd reach
Game of Thrones.
these heights. Yeah. What about you beyond the wall types? Any favorite?
I think my most memorable scene would have been actually climbing the wall.
Oh,
so
yes,
it was when they built the art department are incredible. They built this 50-foot wall in one of the studios and then kind of like surrounded it with green screen and we were all very well looked after. We all had our harnesses on and our wires and I had to be dropped. Oh my God, it was amazing.
And you're really climbing there. They
really are. But it was obviously very safe. But it's kind of like for dear life. And then you've got a wind machine on your left and a snow machine on your right, and it's all very much in the moment. It really is. It really, really is. But without telling me, they decided to drop me at a faster rate.
Visita mi canal.
Just so that there was that kind of like shock element. So that was real, guys. That was real. There's no acting involved there. I really didn't know I was going to get dropped at such a fast speed.
And we got it.
And we got it. And now we can move on.
Charles, do you have a particular favorite scene or moment from your time on the show?
Yeah, it was a great ego-boosting moment to actually ride into a palace.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That hero shot.
With a couple of hundred extras with a horse that does an enormous dump just at the top of the shot and to ride straight down through the middle. I mean, it's quite heady stuff, really. It's great.
Jack?
I'd certainly probably go along with Charles' idea of the ego-boosting thing. I think my favorite kind of or most memorable scenes were when, like, I just have 100 or so minions listening to my every word, you know, beneath my feet, like the wedding feast itself. That was fantastic. And then the massive lion head through which the dwarves came out. That was amazing. Such a kind of a kid, like a kid's imagination, just being like, I want dwarves dressed up as like these people fighting each other. Yeah, that was very memorable.
It's like Joffrey's MTV Sweet 16.
Yeah.
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Charles has already answered this question, but I guess we'll open with when did you find out you were going to die? How did you find out? And I mean, with you, it was probably kind of part of the whole pitch, right?
Yeah, I knew before I got the part. And there was constant talk about how it was going to happen and how disgusting and horrifying it was going to be, and how it would compete for one of the most disgusting deaths in Game of Thrones, which is saying a lot.
Yes, it's true.
Right? If I were to make the top 3, then that's just pretty horrible. I'll never die that badly again for the rest of my life.
I think you most certainly have made the top 3.
High.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. If not the
it would,
top.
Right?
Yes.
Until you see it, it's disgusting.
It really is.
I'm fighting a 6'8", 420-pound.
He was 6'8"?
He was 6'8", 420 pounds, and his sword was like my height. From like the, from the handle up to, it was my height, and he'd like wield this thing around, and I have my little spear that I'm helicoptering around. It's like trying to move in like tight leather armor, I'd like finally like learned how to, I'm like, look, I can make that woo 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 noise. And then they put on this tight like leather armor, and I'm like, it's gone, I can't do it anymore,
And could you talk a little bit, since we're on it, talk a little bit about the process of smashing your head?
They shot my head being completely split open, and the blood and everything like that. And then there was a final shot, and they put all of this prosthetic, like goopy, disgusting brain chunks, little bone marrow, and then like just pumped the blood so that but it was all very cool. Like the temperature of it was completely cool, So they're like, this is going to be really uncomfortable. You're going to feel a lot of pressure, and you're not going to, but it's okay. We're going to have like breathing pattern. And I was passed out. I was like, completely out.
So, Mark, now this is interesting because, Gren's not dead in the books.
No, he's not.
Yet.
No.
We killed Gren early. But it was
really early.
It's really a compliment because we knew that the Battle of the Wall had to have consequences for characters that the audience loved and care about, and that would be you and Joe Alton, who plays Pip, who also meets his maker in the Battle of the Wall.
Yeah.
Were you told, or did you have to read it?
No, I opened the script for episode 9 and started reading this epic battle sequence that lasts the whole hour. 100,000 versus 100, guarding the wall for honor and the survival of mankind, and I get to page 92. There's this scream of the Night's Watch oath going into battle, and there's the gate in front of me, and I skipped 10 pages, and I just see Gren is dead. And I went, the fucking bastard. My girlfriend was sat on the sofa opposite, and I went, do you know how much money we're going to fucking lose because of this? You can wave bye-bye to the car. I got to Belfast, and David and Dan were stood in the bar, and I just put a hand on each shoulder, and I was just like, you fuckers, you've killed me. You've taken me away.
But yeah, I mean, it's true. We were in the writers' room. We said, it's going to kill. It's going to kill the audience, but we have to, their hearts are going to break. We got to kill Gren.
Hurting them.
We got to hurt them. If we're not hurting them, then the show doesn't work. And you haven't told at the time of this recording, you haven't told your folks, right? Your parents that.
No, I haven't told.
You're going to watch it with them?
Yeah, absolutely nobody knows. So they're probably watching it now. So.
What was it like filming that scene? I mean, you're basically having to act against a giant that isn't there.
Yeah, it's just a big green sausage, really, coming towards you. And they had this camera shot where it was on a crane, and it started high and came low, and I'm laid there, and it sort of drifts into my eyes. And it was timed with John, Bradley, and Kit walking through the tunnel to discover the body, and they were walking at such a slow pace. And my eyes are open in the death. The camera's there, and it's coming. I'm like, no, I'll blink, start again. There we go.
But it's quite a scary thing, isn't it, knowing that you can't blink? And as soon as your head starts going, don't blink, hold it together, hold it together.
My eyes had to be kept open by two people. Yeah, because I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So it was the director of photography and the director who came over and was like, Jesus Christ, Jack, come on. It's just like literally held my eyes open so they could take like a CGI shot of my face and then like, I don't know what they're doing. Like,
they're going to take the hands out.
Something like that, I don't know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's my level of like inaptitude. Like.
It's a hard thing. It is.
And Rose, you probably were you informed of your death when you took the part, or did you?
Do you know what? I did a bit of research before I started. So prior to even season 2, I'd read all the books. That's a lie. I'd read 4.
Right.
So I knew of my character's arc even before I started. So I knew it was coming, and I knew that it was going to be happening in the big kind of battle sequence. And no, so I was well prepared.
Yeah. And your death scene was your last night on set as well, wasn't it?
It was. Do you know? And that was so touching that it was
Yeah.
scheduled that way, because I didn't think oh God, it was very emotional. So I didn't think I would have come back the next day to try and be really, really happy. It would have been quite a struggle. But yes, no, it was beautifully timed so that it was my final night. My death scene, dying in the arms of Jon Snow, and then gone. Everybody surrounds in a big circle and starts clapping. I break down in tears, and then Tommy Dunn comes up with my arrow, and it's in a beautiful kind of like, it's a beautiful packaging, and it's on like a case, and there's a red velvet bed made for it, and
was it your bow, or
it was my bow? I'm sorry, yes. So it was my bow, and beautifully kind of presented me into it. So yeah, no, it was lovely. And then there was hugs and more tears, and it was great. I think I don't even think I could speak. I think I was thanking you so much, and I was like,
yeah, it was.
Tus trailers. Visita mi canal.
It was a lovely night.
And Charles, we know how you found out about your death. What was it like shooting that? What I think at the time of this taping, I can predict will become one of the great scenes of the series.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be quietly sitting, having his morning ablution. For to be killed by your son, he kicks open the door. I mean, it's a great way to die. It's a pretty spectacular death, do you know? And, in a way, who better to kill Tywin than Tyrion, because I've treated him appallingly all his life, do you know? I mean, it's a right and proper end for Tywin, I think.
And Jack, you died memorably and violently and horribly, but before that, I believe you shot your funeral. You were lying in state in the Westerosi fashion. With the stones over my eyes.
Right. That was actually probably one of my favorite days of shooting, because I was getting paid for literally just having a nap. You were talking about sleeping. Yeah, I was just there in between takes, having the time of my life, and I was in a beautiful black gown, actually.
You were very pretty, Dan. Yeah.
I did look great.
Yeah.
When I knew I got the part, I think I instantly checked Wikipedia. I didn't really think about it, to be honest, for a while, and then it's like, I suppose, the 3rd or 4th season, I realized it was going to come to an end. Well, but it was fantastic filming it, It was so exciting, because it was such a long scene. It was that wedding feast scene, so it was such a big scene that this was kind of a nice catharsis that came at the end, and we had to do this thing, which was like in school when you make that fake volcano, you have like vinegar and baking soda. I was told, put my head back, we're going to put some stuff in your mouth to make it foam up. I didn't know what they're going to put in it. They put probably like that much of vinegar into my mouth, and then poured baking soda straight in, and was just frothed up as if I was choking.
Did you swallow any of it?
Oh, I swallowed so much of it. I stunk of vinegar for the whole night. I had to do it like 12 times. It was horrible. It really did leave a sour taste in my mouth.
There it is. There's that Gleason wit.
I love it.
Well, it's a glorious death, and again, I think it speaks to your portrayal of the character and your humanity that I think everyone watching it, even if they've been rooting for Joffrey's death, you feel bad for him. I mean, it's this boy reaching out for his mother.
You know, that is, like, people forget he's just a kind of a kid, he's pretty evil and malevolent, but he's just a boy, and he's dead. It's pretty sad.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now, Tom, you play another character who, all apologies, is not dead yet in the books, but perishes on the show. When did you know you were going to be killed? Did you read it too, or?
On the plane journey over to film it. This is when I got to the last bit of the last episode, and I was just reading through, and I had no idea. No one told me or anything.
Really?
Yeah.
Cold-hearted producers.
And then Jojen gets stabbed. I was like, but I'm all right, though. I mean, I'll be fine. It's okay. Yeah. That's going to be quite fun. his sister comes over and slits his throat. Ah, okay. Wow. Gosh, no, I'm definitely dead. Oh, maybe I'll come back as a White Walker or something. No, then the little girl comes out and throws a Molotov cocktail at me and a burst into flames. No, I'm dead. Definitely dead.
Now, that's one of the more involved, crazy sequences we've ever attempted in a series of a lot of involved, crazy sequences where the whites come out of the snow.
No, it's great.
A ton of VFX work. I mean, it's such a technical scene, and yet it's also the emotional kind of climax for your character and for the season.
It was incredible. I mean, we were, again, in true Game of Thrones style, shooting in some miserable quarry, and it was very cold and very wet. And they built these kind of graves into the ground where they hid these poor stuntmen.
And they were stuntmen partly in green.
Yeah, they were partly in green, but it wasn't just like a green blob that they then put all this fantastic prosthetic makeup on. So when you were looking at them and you were fighting with them, they looked like whites, or looked really scary. It's a really cool way to go.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all pretty cool.
Yeah, you have to admit,
it's a fight.
at least we kill you in glorious ways.
The best death you can, on Game of Thrones.
And your death is a real heartbreaker. What was it like shooting that scene? Again, a hugely emotional scene on top of having to be strangled to death.
I mean, yeah, by her love.
By her love.
Yeah, so, and I didn't have even the love scene with Charles. They didn't even give that to me before.
I tried, darling, but...
It was a stressful day. It was my last day.
And it was your last day as well.
Yeah,
oh,
and
wow.
I said, no, I'm not acting this. I can't. I need 2-3 days more. So after 25 takes, they said, Sibel, you have to die now. Just act.
Your love story, and tragic love story, is one of the great arcs in the show. And,
but the people are going to hate me, right? Because at the end, I mean, I was at the trial
I think it's complicated, which is the fun of it.
Yeah, he called me whore. I mean, I'm not a whore.
No, you're not.
Yeah. Shay, I'm talking about Shay.
Yes. So some of your last days on sets were your death scenes, but not Pedro. Your last scene, you went on for a while after you died.
Tráilers.
What was your last day on set like? What was
My
the
last
scene?
day was like staring out at the Adriatic Sea with Lena Headey.
Oh, the scene in episode 5 with the walk and talk.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
that's
walk and talk. It was a bit righteous and selfish of me, but I got out of costume and I jumped into the water while everyone else was like, "Fuck you, dude," because they had to keep working and it was really warm and the water was just begging to be jumped into. It was just like crystal blue and perfect day, and we were on this kind of like pier, and so I had this like really long running start where I just got to sprint towards the water and then just like, dive in, and I'm like, you're like a fish, wee, wee, and they're all like, you fucking asshole.
Thank God he's dead.
Thank God he's dead. And you washed yourself clean of Oberyn Martell.
Yeah, and then I literally got into a van and went to the airport with Lena.
Oh, wow.
Oh, with your new best friend.
With
we
my
got
BFF.
It. Yeah, okay.
Well, why don't we segue then into sort of the kind of last thoughts of and we'll go around of your character and what it was like to, what the character meant to you, and then this overall kind of the experience of Game of Thrones and what that meant to all of you. And Phil, I guess we'll start with you
again?
Since we're here. Maybe talk about Oberyn first a little bit, just the experience of that character in the story. And the...
Well, he's such a badass. It was an intimidating experience playing somebody who lives purely through his passions, who is completely uncompromising. He does what he wants, when he wants, and it was a little bit of fun to do. And I had the time of my life.
And Tom, any thoughts on playing Jojen and your experience on the show?
Yeah, I mean, it's been brilliant. It's been great fun. It's been, like I said, the first time I've ever actually been able to come back to a character that's been really nice to go away for a year and then you come back. I mean, I was only in 2 seasons, but coming back for my second, I felt like I was coming home. Mm. It's a very good, talented group of people, cast and crew, and everyone involved in it cares an awful lot about it. And I think that comes across in the show, and that's what makes it so good, is that people really...
And Sibel, thoughts on Shay and your time on Thrones?
I mean, when I started with Game of Thrones, I didn't expect anything. That was the best thing, I think. I just jumped in the cold water and, learned to swim.
And Mark, what about your thoughts on, I mean, you've been with us since almost the beginning, and with your tight group of guys,
Yeah.
the real camaraderie formed there.
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, it was, I think 3 out of 5 of us, it was our first job. So there was an immediate, out of insecurity probably, you know, a bond that was made. And it felt like you were sort of returning back to a family or a brotherhood, as it is in the show each year. Because Jon Snow's sort of our central character in that part of the storyline, you realise that although on the page there's not as much to say, all of you are kind of holding a mirror up to that character and saying, you know, through our experiences with him, making him reflect on his own behaviour. And obviously Jon Snow goes through so many different twists and turns in the storyline, an identity crisis a lot of the time, you know, wondering what he's fighting for and why he's fighting. I feel sorry for Kit, you know, because without me stood behind him, he's not going to look anywhere near as good looking, but, you know, he's going to have to deal with that, I suppose.
And Rose?
I have a deep love for Ygritte. I think she's a wonderful character, and I've so enjoyed playing her. And she is, you know, she's that other side of Jon Snow. She loves to be as playful, you know, and try and tease him and taunt him and try and get him to smile, which is hard. And that kind of betrayal that she feels at the end of season 3 was very kind of, well, she's so hurt and devastated, and it was brilliant to play. Just her whole kind of shell.
And Charles, any reflections on Tywin and your experience on the show?
Well, I think like everybody else, I've had a ball, really. And it was great being accorded the respect that I was, principally because of the character, not because of me. Actually,
I mean, of both, I think.
You know, it's quite astonishing,
Yeah.
you know, walking around in all that stuff and being so appalling to people all of the time.
Took me 2 years to even speak to you.
You know, then, there's a kind of distance, but I know that was all to do with Tywin, absolutely nothing to do with me. Well, it was great.
Jack?
Yeah, definitely that feeling of enjoyment and kind of schadenfreude or whatever, kind of inflicting pain on others, you know. I love it so much.
You're one of the great villains in television history. I mean,
it's weird.
You are. You're a cultural icon.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an amazing thing.
Yeah, again, and that's crazy to think. I mean, like, and it's something that I suppose, like, people presume sometimes that I get a lot of hate for being me, but everyone's always so nice. So to kind of have that hatred and that kind of, in a way, you know, admiration, if it's not too pompous to say, of kind of whatever the role that I've helped bring to life, it's been amazing.
What you all have brought to the show and to our words, it's the greatest gift a writer can have, to have actors like you and interpreting them and bring them to life and exceeding our wildest expectations. So I'm going to miss you all, and I know the viewers at home will miss you all, and thank you so much for doing this and looking back with me.
No, I have to cry.
Cut it before we lose it.
Cut it before you. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. It's fun.